Hello. Prime Minister David Lange was at the helm of the enormous social changes of the era, and he makes a few cameo appearances in my book. The Prime Minister leaned back in the large ministerial car, his buttocks spreading over the broad leather back seat. The Invermay Agricultural Research Centre receded behind him, the angry shouts of farmers now distant, first blending with the cries of sheep, then swallowed up in the silence that enclosed him inside his vehicle. In the front seat, his driver's neck glistened with sweat, his hands white on the steering wheel. He was badly shaken by the scene from which they were now fleeing like fugitives, and the tyres slid perilously near the ditch as he failed to adequately slow on the winding gravel road. David had been nervous about this meeting until he noticed on the drive from the airport to the research establishment that his ministerial car was traversing Kirk's Drain Road, the lowest point in New Zealand, and he had chuckled to himself, rubbing his hands in private glee at such perfect congruity of geography, topography, history, and contemporary politics. Thus had humour briefly alleviated him from the tension in his stomach, and it was only when confronted with the assembled local farmers, together a wall of stony faces, each one a pink-flecked puce, like the subcutaneous fat that stretches over a leg of lamb, their expressions identically chiselled by the bitter wind that blew cold and hot over these plains, that his mood faltered. He put out his hand and registered the fractional pause before it was taken by John Coots, leader of the local farmers' organisation. Few others had shaken his hand, and no one had wanted to occupy the seat next to him. He was not surprised, although he was always disappointed. As he bent to take his seat, someone in the room let out a loud raspberry, and a ripple of snide laughter went round the room. Coots took the podium, and when he finished talking, David stood up. The applause died quickly away. He was dressed in a well-cut dark grey wool suit, a white business shirt, and a black tie that in certain angles displayed a discreet red sheen. His hair was silvering. He leaned forward slightly, letting his gaze rest deliberately on his audience. Finally, he said, "I'll come back when you elect a representative who belongs in the 20th century." He turned and walked quickly to the door. It swung shut loudly behind him, and a minute later he was out in the chill air, paddock stretching away on either side of the drive. His driver was waiting there, leaning against the car, blowing smoke that hung almost motionlessly around him. He snapped to attention as soon as he saw David and threw his cigarette to the ground. Deftly, he opened the passenger door, looking around in a puzzled way. "Come on," the Prime Minister told him. "We're making a fast getaway." Behind him, the door to the building opened and Coots came hurrying out. "Lange," he bellowed, "wait up. Where are you going?" "Coots," David replied, already halfway into his car. "You say we've stuffed the farmers, but I'm not staying around to be stuffed by you." He slammed the car door and the driver hopped in and started the engine. Coots was standing there, his mouth open and his eyes furious as the car headed slowly away, just as the building door opened again, and this time a crowd of farmers pushed their way out like sheep at the dip. A howl of rage went up as the car disappeared around the first bend, and looking back, David just had time to see them taking off across the paddock, clearly hoping to circumvent the car on the next corner. He told the driver to speed up, but it was too late. The first of the rabble had already leapt down the bank in front of the car, so that the driver had to slow right down for fear of hurting him. In next to no time, others had joined him, and they began pounding on the car with their hands, yelling and sticking their flushed ham faces up against the windows. This was pure hate. It shocked him, but it didn't make him change his mind. He saw their hate as a small-minded thing, a thing to register but not be cowed by. He saw himself, his mouth slightly open, his eyes wide. "Push on, driver, but do it slowly," he said. "We'll get past this lot."
Thank you, Margie.